somewhere, just not here. Sorry it took so long, but dealing with technical issues and trying to figure out this whole thing. Like I said, it's going to be a glorious mess. So first of all, how are you? How you doing? You doing okay? I'm doing okay. I want to thank you for joining me today for the inaugural, very first issue, origin story, collector's item of Joe Q's morning warm-up. What also will make this very special is that this will be the only time I will ever refer to it as Joe Q's morning warm-up. It'll just be morning warm-up because I really hate it when people talk in the third person. Hey, it's just me. So first of all, again, thank you guys for joining me today. It's a little nerve-wracking. I'm trying to learn everything around me. If you see my eyes drift off, it's because I got a checklist of things that I want to talk about. I'll try not to talk too fast. I'm from New York. It happens. Speaking of New York, welcome to New York. This is my bunker. This is the lab. This is my studio. It's a relatively new studio. I'm just starting to put it together. Just moved into this location. But I also have a studio at the Marvel offices and another location. So maybe we'll shoot from there too, depending on how long I do this stuff. So for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Joe Quesada, and I am the Executive Vice President, Creative Director at Marvel, muckety muck, whatever that means. So before this, give you a little history. I've been in comics almost 30 years. I will be at Marvel almost 20 years. I believe in August, I'll be celebrating my 20th anniversary as an official Marvel employee. Before that, I was a musician for a very long time and then got into the world of comics. I was a freelance artist, freelance writer. Then I started my own company, Event Comics. Event Comics then went over to Marvel, and we created an imprint called Marvel Knights. From Marvel Knights, I became editor-in-chief at Marvel. From editor-in-chief, I became chief creative officer at Marvel. From chief creative officer, now I became Executive Vice President, Creative Director, Marvel Entertainment, muckety muck. I'm going to get that put into my business card eventually. So here I am, and I want to tell you how wonderful it is for me to be here with you guys, and how fortunate I feel that I get a chance to talk to all of you out there wherever you may be. But before we go any further, I do need to give a big shout out to our production crew. A show this slick does not happen with a top-notch production crew. So, hey guys at the production crew, how you doing? How you doing down there? Doing good? Okay. All right. They're hanging in there. They're keeping an eye on the focus and on the lighting and the sound, all top shelf stuff. So, first of all, let me tell you guys, I'm suffering a little bit of stage fright here. I don't get stage fright, but I have a bit because I never did anything quite like this. And I think what's really freaking me out the most is if I touch the wrong button, will I set missiles off into the air? I have no idea. But I know a lot of you are probably asking, hey, this show, since it's new, when, what time, how often? Your guess is as good as mine. The reason being that I have a real day job, so I'm going to try to squeeze these in wherever I can. And the better I become with the tech, probably the easier it'll become. So maybe the more often I'll do it. But I'm thinking, hey, maybe it'll be once a week, maybe it'll be twice a week, 3 times, maybe once a month. I have no idea. The duration of the episodes, well, again, free format, depends on what we're doing, what's happening, if we're talking to someone, if we're not. You get the picture. And as to exactly what the show is, I think it's going to morph into whatever it becomes. Consider this sort of like a restaurant soft opening, right? Where I'm testing out the staff, testing out the menu, and you guys will tell me exactly what you want to eat and what if I don't take it off the menu, why you won't come back. So, and you can reach me, by the way, if you need to reach me with your ideas, suggestions for interviews, for bits, for tutorials. I'm at Joe Quesada. Just about everywhere. Joe Quesada Twitter, Joe Quesada Instagram, Joe Quesada Facebook. And so very easy to reach me. And if I don't respond, it doesn't mean that I'm not reading. It doesn't mean that I'm not listening. It just means that it gets overwhelming. So I think maybe the most important question is why? Why am I doing the show? The answer right now is pretty simple. We're all stuck inside. It's pretty bad what's happening out there. And I know we're all hunkering down, and we're trying to be as responsible as possible. So you guys have given me so much joy and have given me so much in my life that I've been been privileged to have, because you follow Marvel, you follow my artwork, you follow me, whatever it may be. And I know that you guys, some people are having a hard time. I mean, I freelanced almost my entire life. So working from home is not abnormal for me. But I know for some other people, it could be rough, and you're looking for things to sort of eat up your time. And, if I could offer a little bit of a distraction, that'd be great. But if I have to be 100% honest with you, I'm doing this as much for myself as I am for you guys. Give me a little something to take my mind off of everything, if it's possible. Now, understand the show is live, so things may happen. You may hear a doorbell ring, you may hear dogs barking, crazy stuff could happen. I could accidentally hit the off button, but that's why we're doing this. So. Also, this show, I see it as a morphing of things that I've done in the past. When I started at Marvel as the editor-in-chief, I was doing a column called Joe Fridays, and Joe Fridays was directly inspired by Stan Lee, and the Stan Lee that I read as a kid, who was talking to the audience consistently through his soapboxes, through the letter columns. Even in the comics itself, he would break the fourth wall and speak to you, Bunky. So Joe Fridays was my way of, I don't have Stan's mutant power. His mutant power was that he was able to write these short little columns, and he would make you feel like he was talking directly to you. I don't have that power. I don't think anybody has that power like Stan did. But what I did have when I started as editor-in-chief in 2000 was the internet. So I tried to use that to the best of my abilities, and we did this column called Joe Fridays. It was on a different website. It wasn't on a Marvel website. And the questions were curated by a reporter who would then give me the questions, and I would answer them straight up. Sometimes people didn't like the answers, but I tried to be as honest as possible. So Joe Fridays then eventually morphed into a column that was named after the panels that I did at conventions, Cup of Joe. So we continued that question and answer for a while, but Cup of Joe was also a very important thing to me. Those panels, when I became Marvel editor-in-chief, those panels grew out of, I remember my desire when I was a young creator coming up. I would have given anything to talk to the top person at Marvel, the top person at DC, the top person at Dark Horse, you name it, right? And those things are kind of possible, but right place, right time, really, at the end of the day. But I never got those opportunities, but I did have some great artists that gave me some great advice as I was coming through the ranks. But Cup of Joe was designed early on, early days of the panel, as a catch-all. Basically, come to the panels, ask me questions about anything, and I will try to answer them. And a lot of them were about career management, how to break into comics, how to break into the world of entertainment, you name it. They were great panels, and they still are great panels, although we can't have any panels right now. So this, I believe, is going to be an extension of that as well. I'm going to do it as long as we're sort of sequestered right now. Maybe I'll do it beyond. I have no idea. So let's play it by ear. What you'll notice right now is that we're not doing Q&A. And the reason we're not doing Q&A today is because I got to figure this stuff out. I will be on sensory overload if I have to look at questions too. So once I'm a little more relaxed here, we're going to open it up for questions, maybe the next episode or the episode after that. But my brain only works with a certain amount of bandwidth, and it's pretty limited usually. Also depends who you ask. So that's kind of my philosophy behind it. So what are we going to do in the show? I mean, I know that we're going to try to have some interviews as long as Skype is working. We're going to do the Q&As with you guys. If you guys got any Qs, I will have some As, or vice versa. Always willing to get advice. We're going to do some artist tutorials. Artist tutorials will be a part of this. And you see right here, you can't see it actually, but my Cintiq is right here, my drawing tablet. So I'm actually broadcasting from here. And that'll be a part of it. The tutorials, though, some will be a little bit higher level in the sense of it's not so much about drawing Spider-Man's face or drawing, hands or eyes or stuff. There'll be some stuff in there about how to build your brand as an artist, building a course that I call building the perfect portfolio. I actually have a course on how to build a perfect portfolio. I've just never taught it, so I'm going to do it here. And yeah, we'll draw a Spider-Man. We'll figure it out, do some simplistic stuff like that too. The other thing that's important to me that I want to try to get across in this is, as we do these tutorials, we talk about art, is I want to demystify the process of art and comic art. I'm not going to get into that right now. That'll be a little cliffhanger for today. We'll talk about what demystifying the process for me means, but hopefully you'll find it helpful, because it's something that I try to do when I talk to young creators, writers, artists, whatever it may be. So today we're going to do a simple tutorial on here, not a how to draw, but maybe more of a how to design. But actually, I need to do something, because I've been keeping him, I guess what they call backstage, for a while. I got a buddy of mine who's going to come on for a second, just to give you a little lowdown. His name is Steve Wacker, for those of you that don't know him. I don't know why he's a friend of mine, because I really don't like him that much. But he's also like anytime I'm doing a panel or I'm on camera, he wants to get in on it. He wants to hog the camera. He wants to be in that space and just sort of hang out so he can be heard. And he used to be an actor, you know what I mean? But his title, and I'm going to read it here, is he's the Vice President, Head of Content, Marvel New Media. And I'm reading it because it's meaningless to me, whatever his title is. He's just Steve. So he's been bugging me when he heard about this. He wanted to be on. So I said, Steve, you're an actor. You know what? You could play the part of my producer. So Steve is my fake producer. He's the producer of the show. And Steve called in from LA. I've had him on hold for a while, and this is driving him crazy, the fact that I'm keeping him on hold this long. So let me see what's the button where I can get Steve here. So, hey, Steve. All right, hang on. Steve, you there?
Hey, Joe, we're all super excited about the show. Can't wait to see what you're going to share with us.
That's great, Steve. Thanks. So we'll see Steve next week. No, we won't. We'll probably never see him again. Okay, so let's try to get to this tutorial. Let me see if I can figure this out for a second. All right, we need to do a little screen sharing here. A little screen share. I believe that's it. Oh, wait. Before we do that, tools, the tools you need. I'm working on a digital tablet, so I will be using this pen. It's, I believe it's magnetic, or it's got a magnetic filament in there, something, but it works like magic. Other thing you need. This is usually coffee. It's the afternoon. So right now, it's a little hot tea, lemonade, and honey. Highly recommended. Water, a water mug, because you got to mix the hot with the cold. At least I do. And then, of course, snack, because you don't know how long you'll be at the drawing board, but I always pack a snack just in case. And really, most importantly of all, lollipops. Got to have your lollipop. So let's do the screen share thing here. All right. Boom. Okay, there we go. Wait, hang on. Let's get some picture here. Boom, there we go. Hey. All right, I'll bring this up here so you guys can see it a little bit better. This is a piece that I did a little less than a couple of weeks ago, and it's the last published piece I sort of had published online, and I call it my Spider-Man COVID-19 piece. CB Cebulski, our editor-in-chief, CB gave me a call, and he had said if I could do a piece very, very quickly. It needed to be super fast. It was something they needed for an announcement that we're going to make on social media. I said, sure. So we talked a little bit about the concept, and the idea behind it was that it was just sort of a piece to talk about, hey, everybody, hope you're staying in, staying safe, and practicing the social distancing stuff while we're going through this thing. And we decided the way to convey this was by using Spider-Man, because Spider-Mans are every person. So Spidey was the character that we chose. And then I started thinking about, well, how can I do this quickly? The way to do this quickly is really to keep the background simple, to keep it very, very graphic. And that's kind of what I did, or at least attempted to do here. So let me show you my thought process through this. Maybe you guys will get something out of it. It's not the actual drawing of it, but it's some of my thinking before I do a piece and the kind of mania that I go through. I'm a little bit nuts when it comes to this stuff. So that's the final. One of the things I want you guys to focus in about the final is that window. For no other reason than just for me, okay? So here's the original sketch. Here's the sketch that I sent in to Marvel, to the crew at Marvel, so they could approve it. I try to be professional. I just don't just draw and just say, here, take it. I want to go through approvals, make sure it's the best concept, because even though I work at Marvel, when Marvel hires me or asks me to do a cover, they're the client. I view them as a client, and I try to work that way. So here it is. You can see all the notes that I wrote up for Marvel, you know, cushy chair, web on the ceiling, window, New York in the background, sad plant, old radiator, and comics. So the thought behind this was, again, we wanted Peter Parker, because he's everyman, and we wanted to give a sense of staying in and sort of, you know, quarantining yourself. So my thought was that Spider-Man would be sitting at home, but instead of just sitting on his cushy couch down here, he would web up his couch, because that's probably what Spider-Man would do and how he'd feel most comfortable. But also because of the fact that he's quarantining himself and he's staying in, well, you know, this will help him feel more like he's swinging around. But even more to the point is the comic book. It's a Spider-Man comic book. And so again, the idea in my head is that Spider-Man, who's hopefully going, ooh, that looks great, that's so exciting, is viscerally getting the feeling of swinging through the city while he can't really do it. A comic book is the next best thing to really entice your imagination and fantasy and take you away from everything that's going on. The window, again, I want to go very, very graphic with the window, kind of flat. The radiator, you'll notice that the radiator in the final piece is an old school New York City steel radiator, because in my head, Peter Parker lives in a small old New York apartment. Same thing with the window, right? The window is not one of these very modern skyscraper kind of windows. It's just sort of an old school wooden window that probably lets in a lot of cold air, a really big draft in the wintertime. Then my favorite part of the entire illustration, the thing that says the most to me about Peter Parker, is the little sad plant. Because I'm sure Peter's watering this plant every day. It's just not going to grow. Now somebody else comes in and water it, it'll blossom into like tulips or something. And then finally, there are these comics down here. So how, you know, what's the thought process also with respect to the design of the piece, not just the graphics and not just the fact that I'm trying to make it easy enough that I could draw it quickly for the deadline. And also my colorist, Richard Izanoff, can color this thing up very, very quickly. Because look, at the end of the day, I could have, you know, put in the room, put in another chair, you know, maybe a coffee table, maybe a poster. I don't know who Peter would have on a poster, but there'd be a poster. That would just take me way too long at this point, and it'd just be a time killer where we don't have the time. So try to make the design interesting. And one of my favorite designs is I really like sort of an S design. And by an S design, I mean this. And I'll explain what this actually is here for those of you who don't know. When I draw stories, I'm a big advocate of being cognizant of left to right movement, right to left movement. But to explain that a little bit, we'll go into further detail on this when I do a storytelling seminar or tutorial. And I'll go deeper into this, but I'll give you the simplest form of it. Here in the West, we read from left to right, left to right. So our eyes are trained to move in that direction. No matter what we do, our eyes are trained. So I try to keep the eyes flowing in that direction because it's left to right, but it's also all the way down, right? So you'll notice the S there. Now, there are times when you could use a right to left design or right to left movement in storytelling, but you have to use it for effect. What's interesting also, though, is that in Japan, in a lot of the mangas, you'll see a lot of the best artists go right to left because that's the way they draw. So different cultures, different way of reading, different styles of doing this. But for us, for me, I go left to right as often as I can when needed and use right to left for effect and sometimes vertical designs for another effect. So Here, the idea was that most of us, our eye will start here on something. So you'll catch the webbing, and you'll come on down, and you'll naturally flow into Spider-Man, naturally flow into the city, and then that sad plant, and then boom, the stack of comics there. Again, the idea is a 2D image, it doesn't move, but the idea hopefully that you get is that while Spidey or Peter is reading that comic there, these comics are all comics that he finished reading, that he's done with, and have landed there. Or, if you want to be argumentative, these are comics that he's yet to read. So he's reading one at a time. I'm going to guess he had a full stack here. That's just me. So, let's move on from this point. You get an idea of the sketch. So, because I tend to be manic, I like to do a few different designs, a few different workings of a particular idea. 9 times out of 10, usually my first instinct, the first idea I have is the one that ends up being the better one, but I like to explore different options because every once in a while I come up with something really, I throw something down that's different. I'm like, oh man, I wasn't expecting that, and end up using it. So always good to do a little bit of trial error, not just one sketch. So in this case, here's an idea I did where, using the same background motif. We're not going to change that because we've got to keep it simple. But I really liked the dynamics of Spidey here. They're very Marvel, right? There's an energy to that arm coming across, right? That arm coming in here and that hand holding the book in a really dramatic way. And just Spidey's lean, the leg coming down, and it all works with the S, right? It all sort of just brings you down. But I opted not to go with this one. And the reason I opted not to go with this one is, although I felt it was more dynamic than my original sketch, which I could probably work up and make more dynamic. Let's get rid of some of this stuff here. Spidey is looking at the book. He's not engaging with you as close as possible. And I always find that cover images, promo images, if you can get the character to look down the barrel of the camera, like I'm doing right now, it tends to engage the reader more. Not a hard and fast rule, depends on the piece that you're doing. So in this case, I liked this, I almost went with it, but decided not as strong as the other one. And then I'll show you a third one. Now, by the way, I did about 8 of these. So I'm just showing you 2 that are worthwhile. The others were just complete rejects, not usable at all. This one I just thought was kind of funny. There was something funny about the way that Peter was looking up. I probably would have lifted the mask up and had him winking or something, but the posture was funny. The way the chair was sitting was kind of funny. It was goofy. But I don't think goofy is what I was really shooting for here. So rejected this one as well. So now what happens, right? So I go to this stage, right? And I decide that, okay, this is the sketch I want to show. Send it off to Marvel. They like it. They say, go do it. So I have to start doing this now. I want to look into the foreshortening of the arms, right? Because those arms outstretched and stuff, you really have to get them right. And sometimes you need photo reference. So I try to dig up some photo reference. Can't think of any photo reference. So when push comes to shove, we artists, we use ourselves as much as we possibly can. Now with computer cams, it's a little easier to take photos of ourselves. So yeah, here I am. Take a look, internet. There I am trying to be Spider-Man. So what's really important about this, right? First of all, what's important about it is the fact that I can't get into a Spider-Man pose sitting on this chair. What's also very funny is that, I'm using a computer cam, so it's like click, 1, 2, 3, right? That thing. Because this is a swivel chair, every time I reached for the controller to click it, this thing would start to slowly swivel. So I can't tell you how many times I had to retake this. But what's important about this shot for me is really sort of the arms, the foreshortening, the hands, the way the hands would naturally, because again, I could probably fake those hands, right? I could probably fake hands reading a comic book and do that. But sometimes, using photo reference and looking at it, not necessarily copying it directly, but looking at it and using it and getting the naturalistic elements of the hands and something that when you're holding something very, very delicately, photo reference can be really invaluable. Everybody does it. Trust me, everybody does it. And so don't be ashamed to use it. Just, careful how you use it because it could end up looking stiff and end up looking like a photo. If I were to trace this photo exactly, I would not get the foreshortening aspect that I'm looking for. It'll end up looking flat. So, and yes, I am fat. So that's a whole other thing. But as you can see, I could not get my legs into that Spidey action kind of pose, at least not on this chair, probably never. But this was really, really important to me. The other thing that was really important is just finding out exactly how a comic, when you hold it like this, there are certain bends and attributes to it that are important. And again, I'm going to abstract from this, but it's better than drawing this, right? If you just draw something that's flat, and you could get away with it, but I'm a little bit manic. I try to do something a little more naturalistic. So let's move on from here. And let's see, we're back. Okay, we're back at our sketch. And we'll move on from our sketch now to the actual pencils. Now, I didn't know I was going to do the show. It would have taken too long to actually videotape these pencils, but let's show them anyway. These were the pencils for the piece that I eventually inked digitally because of, again, had to get it done. So, most people who are actually really good inkers, who are great artists and great inkers, would never pencil this tightly for themselves to ink. They would pencil a lot looser and then tighten it up in the inks. Problem with me is I rarely, if ever, inked my work. I've just started to ink my work on it because I'm able to do it through the digital medium. But I'm not really great at it, so I'm not really as comfortable with it. So I would rather draw my piece and then go in there and ink it. So a few things to notice here is I was trying to get that surprised look on Spidey's face here. Actually, let me create another layer because it'll be a little bit easier. Okay, so I'm trying to get that surprised look on Peter's face. So we got the mouth going, ooh, and the eyes as wide as possible. The other thing, here are these arms. The hands inspired by my hands, and you'll notice the break of the comic book here, right? This sort of like leaning into the spine. It just sort of ticks right there, and then here it is. The cover sort of just flops over a little bit here, and then into the hands, and even here. There's a little break here as opposed to a curve. These are little elements that I'm trying to relieve the monotony of just doing, boom, 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 right? Let's get rid of that. Other thing to notice, again, I'm not an inker, but I know inkers and things that I've learned. So in doing this pencil, because I know I'm going to ink it, you'll notice that, take a look at the window, for example. These lines, oops, hang on, let's see. These lines are ruled in pencil. And the reason I'm ruling in pencil is because I'm not going to rule them out when I ink them. So there's a reason behind that. This is an old wooden window, so it's kind of organic. If this was a modern window with steel frames, I'd be more inclined to ink with a ruler. But since it's not, you'll see what I did in a second. And also, see that background? See that background? That's different than the one you saw. There's a reason for that, I think. So when I originally did the piece, I threw in this kind of loose idea of a very iconic building here in New York. Now, the thing you have to be careful with when you're publishing professionally, when it comes to iconic buildings, a lot of these buildings, their imagery is copywritten. So you could put a famous building in your piece and then have them suddenly knocking on your door asking for money. That's true, for those of you that don't know. A lot of you do know this. So I added this iconic building, but then I created this sort of uplight, right? This uplight effect as the lights are beaming up in the city and it looks glorious and it looks like a torch. And then when I sent it to Marvel, I said, hey guys, run this by legal. Was this fudged enough that you get away with it? And the word came down, fudged enough, we're good. I'm like, cool. But I covered my bases and I did a second one anyway. So, so this was the pencils. These are the pencils for the piece right here. Let's see. You can see radiator, that's all ruled in. Now, this is a steel radiator, but it's kind of a raw steel radiator. I see it as one of those where it's just crusted over with layers of paint. I've lived in many apartments like this. I know the feel, and the dead plant I could relate to. I have never been able to keep a plant alive in my entire life. But let's move on. That's not important. Just useless information. So here are the inks. Now let's get to the window here, and you'll see where the window. I used that guide. I used the guide of the ruled lines, right? I used, oops, wrong piece. There we go. I use these rule lines, and then instead of using, well, there is a ruling setting here on the digital tab where you can just do this tablet, but instead I went in here and just freehanded it this way. You do it slowly, and again, I'm not a great inker by far, but ultimately the effect that you get is a more naturalistic one. The window feels more like wood to me. It feels more rickety and definitely feels drafty. Even with the radiator here, some of this is roughed out to give the idea that it is, been painted over numerous times. So these are the final inks here. I've, this spider webbing thing, it looks like it's fun. It is not fun to do. It is just really, really time consuming and hard. But there's little things that I do here in the inks. These are my preferences. I'm sure there's professional inkers looking at this going, but hey, I had to do it. I had to rush out. So, I leave little areas like this open, just to give the sense that that's sort of where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. And, again, loose rendering here, very, very loosey-goosey rendering to give the sense that this is not new furniture. This stuff has been probably pre-owned 6 or 7 times. It's Peter Parker. But I think, again, here it is. There it is. I'm sorry. I am the Leonardo da Vinci of dead plants. I love that dead plants so much. But, there are other things here that, these are the kind of things that I sweat. The chair, I'm trying to find a center of gravity for Spider-Man. And again, you guys don't have to go this crazy. I just go this crazy. This chair has got this lean to it, right? It's sort of leaning in this direction, leaning in this direction. So I'm trying to find a way. If I just put Spidey straight up here doing this, right, you can tell right away that that's just going to look like I drew it and then just rotated the image, right? But what I wanted to do with the pose was I wanted to find a center of gravity for Spidey. So the center of gravity to me, if the chair is leaning in this direction, the center of gravity would be that Spidey has to lean in that direction. Yes, I think about this stuff. It's crazy. I know. Yeah. So other little things that I sweat over are tangents. We'll talk about tangents at a whole other episode. Boys, I talk about this stuff, I realize we got a lot of episodes we can do. But these, luckily, the social media group that needed this piece wanted it done in layers. So they asked me to make sure that Spider-Man and the background are on 2 separate layers. This way, if they use it for different configurations, they can, raise, enlarge, do whatever they want with it. But in doing that, actually, I also have to make sure, and hopefully they watch out for these too, are some tangents. Originally, because it's on a layer, this chair was moved over a little bit, and then what happened was that this line ran into this line, and it just became this weird thing where the leg would end here, and then the windowsill would begin here. And if I shifted that one this way, then this one would, so I had to find the sweet spot where these angles and lines weren't necessarily running into each other and creating these weird tangents. So here we got this one here. This one just barely makes it. This one just barely makes it. Unfortunately, as I get up here, things like this, that little tangent there, they drive me nuts. The fact that, these little webbings here, you could barely see, but they do connect. Not as bad, but still, these tangents are, where that, sorry, got the eraser out, where this window hits the webbing right here, not good. But with a piece like this, it was almost impossible unless I went back in and redrew, which I normally would do, but just didn't have the time to do it. So that was this, and then, or this was that. So that's the other background I did, you know, and just sort of fudged in, did a little threshold thing with a photo and mucked it up a little bit, and just in case that Empire State Building thing did not fly. But you know, here's the let's see, yeah. So this was my final piece here. This is the one. I then took the covers and did a little Photoshop magic where I took a cover and I just sort of, you know, warped it. Where is it? Oh, okay, not working now. Oh, okay. Well, my pen has decided not to work, but you guys get the idea. Luckily, I got through the bulk of the tutorial without this happening. So let's see here. Got that cover in there. I warped the, I just took a Marvel logo, slugged it in there. Clearly not very neatly, but I did that. And then the same with these comics down here. Not as effective because they're low res, but you sort of get the impression of what these books are. The other thing, when I told Richard Easenoff to color this piece, I asked him, make sure that when you color it, to affect the comics themselves so that they look like they're part of the same world and not just like pasted on as I have them. So Richard did, and you know, he added some effect to this. Let's see. I think I got, might be stuck here. Boo, hiss. Here we go. Okay, so you can see the difference there. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Oh, and by the way, yeah, we went with this particular background when it finally showed up. So I have a feeling that somebody in legal said, yeah, let's use the other one. If we got it, let's use it. So let's give you a sense here of what the difference was here between what Richard did and what I had. See, he added a little bit of a drop shadow. He added a bit of a let's see if that, oh, there we go. Okay, we're back working with the pen. So he added a little shadow there. He added some light sources in there to make that pop or make it part of the world. And then he added some, you know, some slight shadows. And credit to Richard Easenoff. Richard was about to take a flight from France back to the States, and he literally knocked this out. I'm sure he did it at an airport. I love the guy. He's one of the best colorists in the world, and he really did me a solid on this. But you can see that he added some shadows here as opposed to, that's my version. And then, you know, it's just subtle, but it's enough to make it part of the world. So that's that. Let's come back to just us. Let's see here. Hey, I'm back. So I want to thank you guys. This is the first one. This is the first one, and it's. I think we made it through. We made it through okay. I didn't blow anything up. You know, I do. Actually, you know what? Hang on a second. Let's get the camera going. Crew, what did you think? What did you think of the first show? Maya, what'd you think? Come on, Maya, what'd you think? What was it? Rough, yeah. It's an old joke. It still works. Still does. Thank you. She could bark on command. It's awesome. Now if I could only get her house trained. 6 years old. She's not house trained. It's not funny. It's really, really not funny. Anyway, guys. So I'm thinking this didn't go too bad. Did it? Okay. Hopefully it didn't. So that means that I'm thinking I'm going to try this again either tomorrow, Tuesday, or Wednesday. I'm going to shoot for tomorrow. And if we do tomorrow, hang on. I got a special guest. Ready? Boom! C.B. Cebulski, editor-in-chief of Marvel, my buddy, one of my best friends on the planet. Great editor-in-chief, great guy, amazing eye for talent, foodie, you name it. One of the best rounded people I know. So CB is going to come on and he'll chat with us. Maybe we'll have the Q&A function happening. We'll see. I don't know. You know, and I'm a little woozy about having him live because, you know, he's got a mouth like a trucker. So we'll play it by ear. And like always, guys, you know, I want to thank you for being here. And this is going to be continued. And that's it, man. Wash your hands, be safe, stay indoors, hug your loved ones. I want to see you here again. I'll try to be here again. And that's it. So until next time, I'll see you in the funny books.